When people think about moving here to Ocala, and probably most places in Florida, one of the top things on their wish list is usually a pool. And I totally get it. I mean, come on, it's Florida. I can't think of too many better ways to spend a gorgeous summer day than floating in the pool. Except maybe floating in the pool with a nice cold adult beverage in hand while waiting for the ribs to come out of the smoker. But to each his own. But anyway, if you've been dreaming of a pool in your next home, but you've never ever had your very own pool before, you probably have some questions about owning one. So why don't I just dive right in and go over some of the pros and cons of having your very own private pool and whether it's worth it to buy a home with a pool or maybe even have one put in after you buy your new home. So here are the answers to the top 7 questions that you probably have about owning a pool in Florida. Number 1 is, do I really need my own pool? Well, that's kind of up to you. A lot of communities here in Ocala have community pools that are available for the residents, and we have some really nice public pools here in Ocala too, including the brand new Florida Aquatic Center, or FAST, which was just opened in Southwest Ocala. That place is really nice. It's got an indoor pool and an outdoor pool. It's really nice. But even though any kind of pool can be lots of fun, there are just a whole lot of benefits to owning your very own private swimming pool. Emphasis on private. With your very own pool, you can walk right out of the house and go for a swim anytime you want to. If you want to swim at midnight under the stars, which is really relaxing, by the way, no problem. Get a little hot during the day while you're working in the yard? Just go dunk yourself in the pool and cool off for a while before heading back out to the garden. Or my personal favorite, which I don't get to do near often enough, is grab a good book, a cold beverage, and a pool float and settle in for a couple of really lazy, totally unproductive hours. And a real plus, at least for me anyway, is you don't have to put on makeup to hang out in your very own pool like you would at a public one. I mean, hey, I go nowhere in public without makeup, and that includes the pool. So not having to worry about it, totally worth the entire cost of the pool. Really. So to make a long story short, if you're planning on using your pool every day or even just several times a week, I'd say that buying a home with a pool or one with enough room to add a pool is probably something you might want to consider. On the other hand, if you only want to swim every once in a long while, then the upkeep and the day-to-day maintenance might not be worth it to you, and a community pool might suit you just fine. Which brings me to question number 2, and probably the most common question I get asked, is how much does it cost to put in a pool? And that one's a little bit tougher to answer, because it kind of depends on what kind of pool you put in and how fancy you want to get with it. For a basic in-ground pool, you're probably looking at between $30,000 and $50,000 to put in a pool from scratch, depending on the type of pool and what finishes you choose. If you want that pool heated or a bird cage installed over it or a hot tub, well, then the price is going to start heading up north real quick. Same thing goes for any fancy pool shapes, extra lighting, waterfalls, wet decks, or grottos. The sky's the limit, both for what you can add onto your pool and also, unfortunately, for how much it's going to cost you to get all those fancy add-ons. So how much it's going to cost pretty much depends on how much you got to have. Now, question number 3. Do I need a screen or a bird cage over my pool? Again, that's kind of up to you and your tolerance level. I know a lot of people have pools right out in the great wide open and not a screen in sight, and they are perfectly happy with it that way. Me, I gotta have a screen. Having a screened-in pool area just has a whole lot of benefits, the biggest one being that it keeps the bugs out. And I guess I'm just stingy because I don't want to share my pool time with bugs of any kind. And let's be honest, folks, Florida summers are not exactly bug-free. I'm also a big fan of the outdoor kitchen, so when I'm cooking outside, I'm also going in and out of the house a lot. And having bugs screened out of the pool area means they are not getting in my house when I'm going back and forth. So for those reasons alone, I think that a bird cage is kind of a no-brainer. But having a screened-in pool area is great for a couple other reasons too. One is that it will filter out some of the UV rays of the sun, so while you're out enjoying the pool, it's not as damaging to your skin. And a screened enclosure will also keep leaves and stuff out of your pool, which makes maintenance a whole lot simpler, not to mention cheaper, because all those leaves and such can really screw up your water chemistry. And not only that, but probably the most important thing of all is the issue of safety. A bird cage is going to keep animals and small children out of your pool and safe from falling in. Now, just like the cost of building a pool, the cost of a screen enclosure varies depending on the size of the enclosure, how tall it is, how fine the mesh of the screening is. Heck, they even have different levels of screening to keep out even more of the UV rays. So again, it's just going to depend on your needs and your budget. One thing that you do need to know about having a screen enclosure, though, is that you will have to clean it once in a while. Over time, the screen enclosure is going to collect some mold and mildew and just generally get dirty and dingy looking. So you're probably going to want to pressure wash it at least twice a year. Not exactly a deal breaker in my opinion. The question number 4 is about the difference between a saltwater pool and a chlorine pool and which one's better. Now, a lot of people think that a saltwater pool is like swimming in the ocean, or that a saltwater pool doesn't have chlorine in it at all, which is not exactly the case. A saltwater pool still uses chlorine, just not as much as a traditional chlorine pool. So the water's going to be softer, and you won't get the stinging eyes or irritation that you can from a chlorine pool. The way it works is that a saltwater pool has a chlorine generator that's part of the filtration system, and that generates chlorine from the pool salt that you're going to add to the pool. But even though you're using salt, you're not using enough to make the water actually salty, so it's not really like swimming in the ocean at all. Now, another benefit of a saltwater system is that because the generator creates the chlorine automatically along with the filtering process, your pool chlorine levels stay pretty much at a stable level. And pool salt is always a good bit cheaper than chlorine, especially right now. So a saltwater pool is cheaper to maintain on a regular basis. There are still a couple of drawbacks to a saltwater pool, though. A saltwater pool system is fairly expensive to install, and repairs to the generator can get pretty pricey too. And at the end of the day, it is still saltwater no matter how dilute it is, and saltwater is corrosive. So over time, it's going to damage any concrete or metal parts of your pool. You'll also need to run your filter 24/7, since if the filter's not running, it's not generating any chlorine either. On the other hand, a traditional chlorine pool doesn't require any expensive equipment like a chlorine generator, but it will need to be tested once or twice a week to maintain the right chemical balance. You're also going to need to add chlorine and more than likely a few other chemicals on a regular basis. It's not exactly rocket science, though. I mean, if I can do it, and I do, I'm pretty sure most anybody else can too. And unlike saltwater systems, chlorine's not going to cause any damage to major pool parts, so you're not going to have that to worry about down the road. Of course, a chlorine pool has some drawbacks too. The chlorine in a traditional chlorine pool can be irritating to your eyes, your skin, and your throat, and it can bleach out that brand new swimsuit that you just bought. Me, I have the at home in the pool swimsuit, which I don't really worry about getting damaged, and the I'm on vacation swimsuits, which only get pulled out for special occasions. You know, like actually going on vacation, which is why I don't use any of those swimsuits very often. Actually, I think at this point, a couple of them could be considered vintage clothing. But hey, who needs a vacation when you can vacation at home in your very own pool? Question number 5 is, can I maintain my pool by myself, or do I have to hire somebody to do it for me? And that just depends on how handy you are and what you feel your time's worth. A chlorine pool is going to cost more in chemicals and labor because chlorine's expensive, especially right now. And you'll need to test it a couple times a week. A saltwater pool is more expensive to install, but cheaper to operate over the long haul. But you don't have to be a genius to maintain either one. Like I said, we have a chlorine pool and I handle ours just fine. But if you simply don't have the time or the inclination to do all that, you can hire a pool person to do it for you. We got a lot of pools here in Ocala, and that means we have a whole lot of pool people to choose from too. So you're not going to have any trouble finding somebody. But regardless whether you maintain your pool yourself or hire it out to somebody else, you will need to invest in some basic pool equipment. Among other things, you're definitely going to want a good pool vacuum to keep the bottom and the sides of the pool clean and sparkly. And depending on what you buy, you can figure between $300 and $1,000 for a good one. And you'll want a good one, so don't skimp. It'll be worth the investment, trust me. Question number 6 is, should I heat my pool? And if I do, how much is that going to cost? And again, it just depends. If you want the option to swim all winter, you're probably going to want a heated pool. And if you have any kind of hot tub or spa feature, you're going to have heat for that. Unless you just want to sit in cold, bubbly water, which I kind of doubt. Now, as far as how to heat your pool, there are basically 3 options. The first one, and the cheapest of the bunch in the long run, is a solar heating system, which is a bunch of black panels that generally get mounted on your roof, and the water circulates out of your pool and through the panels to heat up from the sun. So after the initial purchase cost, you're basically heating your pool for free. Now, the main drawback to this method is if you have a spa, you can't really heat that with solar heat. And some people don't care for having the solar panels on their roof. So the second option would be a gas heater. Now, a gas heater can heat both your pool and an attached spa, and it'll heat things up pretty fast too. But it's going to be more expensive because it can use a lot of gas. And the third option is a pool heat pump. And these work pretty much like your standard home heat pump, and actually they pretty much look like one too. They run off electric and they are very efficient, particularly here in Florida. But they won't heat your pool as quickly as a gas heater, and they might not keep the spa quite as warm as a gas heater will. And now for question number 7. Does a pool add value to my home? Well, yes. Yes, it does. Unlike some other areas in the country, here in Florida, a pool definitely adds value. Like I said earlier, the first thing on most buyers' wish list is a pool. And depending on the type of pool and the size of your home, a general rule of thumb is that you get about a 10% bump in price for a pool home. But that said, if you decide to install an in-ground pool, you're not going to get dollar for dollar return on your investment when it comes time to sell. Buyers will pay a premium for a pool home, but an appraiser will not give you the actual cash value for the cost of installing one on an appraisal. So if you put in a new pool, you can usually figure to recoup between the 30 and 50% of the installation cost, depending on how old the pool is when you actually sell your home. So if you decide to add a pool to your existing home, make sure you're adding it mainly for your own enjoyment and not just for resale value. So there you go. And if you're thinking about buying a pool home here in Ocala, or thinking about buying any kind of home at all, I'm here to help. Just get in touch and we can dive right in and get started. Did you get that? Pool, dive? Yeah, I know, cheap humor. But hey, what can I say? I'm easy. So until next time, take care and I'll see you soon.